Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled People Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. My Karen mother-in-law refuses to eat my Thanksgiving cooking. After that, bossy coworker does himself out of a promotion. And after that, am I the jerk for offering 2 different kinds of cake at our wedding? Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen doesn't get any Thanksgiving turkey. I always preferred ham, to be honest. So please smash that like button. And subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My Karen mother-in-law refuses to eat my Thanksgiving cooking. This year, I, 32 female, am hosting Thanksgiving at my house, and I've been working all month on coming up with the menu and testing all my recipes. I'm so excited to share my cooking with my family, and my husband, 35 male, has been super supportive and helpful throughout all of the planning and the prep work. I have bought all of the ingredients, and I have a beautiful variety of dishes planned, both traditional and a few unique additions. Well, today, my husband dropped the bombshell on me that mother-in-law wants to bring her own dinner to eat when she comes over. I asked him why she would need to bring her own food when I will have more than enough here. He just made excuses saying, I know how his mother is, grade A picky eater, and she won't like anything that I've prepared. I thought that was ridiculous. I'm not making anything unfamiliar to her, and there will be plenty to choose from. He argued that her bringing her own dinner would be a good compromise, and I disagreed. It would be hugely obvious that she's making a comment on my cooking, and it would be humiliating to have her there eating something completely different in front of everyone. It's like she's trying to make a point of showing that my cooking isn't good enough for her. I think she's being incredibly rude and disrespectful of the time, money, and labor that I've put into this upcoming meal. I told her if she can't eat anything here, then she's welcome to stay home and eat whatever she wants. My husband is now calling me insensitive and petty. He says I'm ruining the holiday. I don't see it that way. I only want friends and family around who are appreciative and kind. I don't need the negativity of someone rejecting everything I've cooked and insulting my cooking when I've worked so hard. This has truly been a labor of love, and I took on this responsibility to share that love with my family and friends. Am I the jerk for not wanting my mother-in-law to come if she's going to reject everything I've made? Edit. Because people are asking, here's what I plan on serving. First, all of the traditional Thanksgiving foods. Roasted turkey, stuffing, classic creamy mashed potatoes, pretty much everything you can think of. How can there not be one thing that she can eat? Update. OMG, there's lots of replies. Thank you all for weighing in. I've been reading your responses and I've been thinking a lot. And as much as it hurts my feelings, I think the get her with kindness route will be the best thing to do. I'm so overwhelmed and exhausted, and I just want to have a perfect Thanksgiving for everyone. I'll let her know she's welcome, and I'll ignore her and focus on my other guests. I won't let her ruin my day, and I'll be the bigger person. That's what family does, as much as I will be irritated on the inside. Who knows, maybe she'll try something and like it, but if she doesn't, that's okay too. Yes, your mother-in-law is being rude and disrespectful, but uninviting her is not the answer. Here's what you do. Welcome her and her special meal with open arms. Get her back with kindness. Be sure to point out to the other guests, in a lovey-dovey way, if perhaps a wee bit patronizing tone of voice, how mother-in-law has special needs and brought her own food, and you are so glad she could make it, even though eating away from home is so difficult for her. Offer to help her heat up her meal. Tell her it looks absolutely delicious, and ask her for the recipes, and ask her if she could bring one of her wonderful dishes to the next gathering. Meanwhile, you and your other guests can enjoy your fabulous meal, and your mother-in-law can listen to all of the compliments you get for it. Not the jerk. This is one of those situations where the mother-in-law thinks she's embarrassing OP, but she's really embarrassing herself. OP, consider how good you will feel as you watch her get more and more uncomfortable eating her special meal, and consider that if you uninvited her with no explanation, you will look like a jerk. If she brings her own food, she will look like an idiot. Everyone sucks here. Mother-in-law is being rude to refuse your food in this way. Your husband isn't being very supportive of you, and you are escalating things unnecessarily. Your cooking, as much as you've dedicated to it, is not the point of this holiday. Time with family is. Your mother-in-law eating her own food won't be humiliating to you, assuming your food tastes at least decent. The only one that will be looked down on for her decision is her. She's the one behaving strangely. Any judgment will be passed on to her, not you. Be the bigger person. Be the classy, generous hostess. Spoil the rest of your guests with delicious food, make no comment on mother-in-law's behavior, and rise above. Also, is it possible that she has a genuine food issue, such as a sensory thing causing her to struggle with foods? Those do exist, and they're not always diagnosed. If so, going to eat at someone else's house can be a terrifying prospect, and bringing her own food allows her to enjoy the holiday with everyone without having the anxiety about if she'll be able to eat anything. I feel like the majority of food issues on Am I the Jerk posts that I read, the comments absolutely back up the OP wanting to bring their own food due to restriction, allergies, or preference. It's often suggested as a way to still go and enjoy without troubling the host to cater to one specific person. So I'm really confused at all the comments against the mother-in-law because OP perceives her actions as a slight. I think it's hard to say who the jerk is without more info backing up why OP thinks mother-in-law is targeting her and also why it matters so much. If she is trying to slight you, her eating the food and complaining about it will not make the holiday more enjoyable for you. It just won't. And that's what you'll be getting if she comes without her own meal. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or mother-in-law? Please let us know. Alright, all you kids of Reddit, time for a dose of common sense. When you go to someone's house on Thanksgiving, you eat what they make. Got a problem with that? Stay home. Ain't no way I'd allow that Karen mother-in-law to act like that in my house. Bossy coworker does himself out of a promotion. My first job out of high school was a big deal for me. It was a simple data entry job that I took very seriously. I started moving up very quickly. With so many young entry-level employees, turnaround was high, and I guess sticking around made me stand out. I was soaring in that company. Before I knew it, I was a supervisor over a team. In the department I was in, there was only one other supervisor. We worked very well together and agreed on almost everything. The two of us made a full training for our department, a department policy sheet, and conducted all direct employee contact. Our department was doing so well that our manager was recruited by another department for a much more lucrative role in the company. The new manager was the nicest man alive, but as an outside hire, he didn't know anything about how we ran things. At the same time as he was getting acquainted with us, the other supervisor went on maternity leave. I was the only lead in the department left that really knew what they were doing. It sounds rough, but I blossomed under these circumstances. I helped find our new acting supervisor, whom I'll call Trevor. I went into all meetings with my manager to take notes and help him understand what we were discussing. I hired all of the new staff members, from talking to the recruiter, conducting the interviews, and making the call to offer the position. I was running the show and I loved it. Our new manager was not really grasping things and told me he was thinking about leaving. I was sad to see him go. He then told me that he thought he would ask them to have me backfill his position. This would have been the opportunity of a lifetime. A week later, my manager told me that he talked to the director, but the position wasn't going to go to me. It was going to the acting supervisor, Trevor. Apparently, this guy had been schmoozing while I had been working. I hadn't even been paying attention to him. Trevor had become buddy-buddy with the director by spending all his time in his office and going drinking with him at the driving range. I was heartbroken. I wasn't aiming for the job until my boss suggested it to me. I had gotten my hopes up just to be crushed. I tried to shake it off and get back to work. I oversaw department projects. I had one that required thousands of entries on an Excel sheet. I assigned our staff to the project and did my share. At the end of the day, I had gotten the sheets back from everyone directly under me, but nobody on Trevor's team had emailed me theirs. I went to one of their desks and asked them about the project. The person I asked shyly told me that Trevor told her not to do it. When I asked her why he would say that, she told me he said that I wasn't her boss. I was shocked. This is how we had done every project since we had opened the department. What was he thinking, telling people not to do it? I could explain the small ways that Trevor constantly was trying to undermine me or the almost jealous behavior he displayed toward me, but this story is long enough. I'll just say, while shocking, it wasn't out of character for him. I had always been able to keep him from causing damage in the past, and this didn't need to be any different. Then I realized what a golden opportunity this was. I decided to maliciously comply. I just nodded and thanked her for her help. The next day, the director called the manager and supervisors into his office. He asked me why the project wasn't completed the day before. I shrugged and told him I had sent it out to the team like I always do and had even done a chunk of it myself. I looked at Trevor. The look he gave me, he was pale and looked as if he was about to be sentenced. When Trevor eventually tried to explain that he told the staff under him not to do it, the director asked everyone but Trevor to leave. The project had been related to payroll, and Trevor had royally done over the payroll staff. Our director was livid. He was in there for over an hour. I heard the director raise his voice more than once, which was wild. The doors and offices were glass, so when I passed the office a bit later, I saw Trevor with his head down while our director was shaking his head and moving his hands in a very animated manner. A week later, the other supervisor returned, and Trevor was asked to return to his old position under her. I was offered the position of manager soon after, which I gladly accepted. Am I the jerk for offering 2 different kinds of cake at our wedding? My husband, Josh, who's 29, and I, 27 female, just had our wedding a couple of weeks ago, and we mostly got good feedback until today. We had heard that a lot of people have been smack-talking the cake behind our backs. Josh and I originally were going to have a smaller wedding at a resort. We were fortunate enough to be given some money to invite extra guests, so we decided to expand the wedding and have some of our second cousins and their kids, and some friends that we otherwise don't get to see as often. We're on a budget, so we decided to keep the fancy cake, the cutting cake for the pictures, not the real one, for immediate family, and the pastor and a few members of the wedding party that have known us for the longest. We gave them the cake in boxes to take home though, so they wouldn't be eating it in front of everyone else. Minus the pastor, because he flew out from a ways, and he's vegan, so he couldn't eat the dinner, and we wanted him to have something to eat before it got too late. We got a couple of sheet cakes. One was vanilla and buttercream with rosettes, and there was another sheet cake of pineapple chocolate chunk, especially for Josh's side of the family, because they spend a lot of time in Florida. Pineapple chocolate chunk? Oh. We found out from talking with family that there was a lot of full slices left on people's plates of the pineapple cake. Gee, I wonder why. Which the servers would not take home with them, so we noticed you can see it in a lot of the pictures. We were having too much fun to notice at the time. We loved catching up with all of our guests. Apparently, Josh's family did not like the cake like we thought they would, and there have been some unkind words behind our backs. We got a text from Josh's uncle that wasn't meant for us to see, and it really stung. We're unsure where to go from here and what to say. The cake did not go off like we had hoped for, but we think they're being unnecessarily mean. By the way, there was a full dinner, 3 kinds of cheese, even Monterey Jack available, and an open bar that didn't close until late. So I feel like we were pretty good to our guests on a shoestring budget. Not the jerk, but I'm a bit confused as to what Josh's family spending a lot of time in Florida has to do with deciding to have a pineapple chocolate cake. I lived in Florida for almost a decade, and I can tell you with complete confidence that there is zero connotation between Florida and pineapples. I think you're confusing Florida with Hawaii. But beyond that, the combo of pineapple and chocolate just sounds yucky, and I think that's likely what people are speculating on. Honestly, I wouldn't sweat it. Everyone will forget about it shortly, I'm sure. What matters is if you enjoyed your wedding. I don't think the complaints were about you serving sheet cake, which is totally common at weddings, but rather about the flavor combination of chocolate and pineapples. Feels like you made a random choice based on a bizarre assumption of what people eat in Florida. According to my husband, who used to live in Florida, chocolate pineapple is not a Florida thing. Instead of asking the guests you were trying to cater to, and it sounds like you served the pineapple chocolate cake only to Josh's family instead of asking what they wanted. You're not the jerk for having 2 cakes, but if you didn't give guests an option and then got upset when the cake you thought they wanted wasn't eaten, then yes, you're the jerk. Edit. From your comments, it's clear that you decided who got which cake and expected them to trade plates if they weren't happy. So yeah, you're the jerk. You're the jerk. You didn't get a vegan meal for your pastor who flew a long distance to officiate. You openly distributed 3 cakes, which very clearly were of different levels, and chose who got what. You served one side of the family before the other. You assumed that people could trade cake flavors with strangers. You decided that chocolate pineapple would be the best flavor for his family because they've spent time in Florida. What? Honestly, I'd say you're a bad host rather than a jerk, because you seem to have meant well, but your planning decisions are inhospitable and indefensible. Chocolate pineapple cake. Ew. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her guests? Please let us know. Chocolate pineapple cake? I'm sorry, but I think I'm gonna be sick. Am I the jerk for refusing to go to my wife's deceased husband's family's house for Thanksgiving? I'm 36, male, and my wife, 33, female, lost her first husband several years ago from a brain aneurysm. They had 2 boys together, who are 7 and 6, and I've made my peace with the fact that she will always love him. She even has a sort of shrine to him in our home, and I would never ask her to remove it. We got married only a couple of years ago, and last Thanksgiving, she asked me to come with her to Thanksgiving at her former in-laws' house. Apparently, she's gone to their house for Thanksgiving since her first husband passed. I support this as it's a way for her to stay connected to her first husband's family, and also since it's a way for her 2 kids to maintain a relationship with their father's side of the family. So I went last year. It was a little uncomfortable, but her late husband's family treated me really well. They were very kind and welcoming to me. It wasn't a bad Thanksgiving, but it was still really awkward and I felt very out of place. This year, my wife is trying to get me to go back, but I just want to go have Thanksgiving with my own family. I've invited her along, but also told her that I understand if she doesn't want to go, but that we should be moving forward. But if she doesn't want to, fine, but that she shouldn't try to make me go to Thanksgiving at her late husband's family's home. She's responded that we can have Christmas, Easter, the 4th of July, etc. with either her family or my family, but that she's pledged Thanksgiving to her late husband's family and that I should come with her as her husband to support her. I don't want to. I think it's weird and morbid. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. This isn't just her late husband's family. This is her children's paternal family. Did you think you'd step in and your family would be a substitute? It does not work that way. It's one holiday a year for your stepkids to spend with their father's family. She offered up every other holiday. If you didn't want a connection to that part of the family, you should not have married a widow with kids. You're the jerk. Suck it up for the kids and your wife. You and your new family will all benefit if the kids have healthy relationships with their paternal grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. Don't turn down extra sources of love and support for your wife and the kids. You're the jerk. I understand it's not comfortable, but the kids, they're going to want to know the dad they didn't get to know. Yet, the dad they do know is uncomfortable with it. You don't technically owe him or his parents any favors, but you are raising his kids. You're going to be their dad and do all of the things that this other guy and his parents probably dreamed about. If you only see them one day a year, you can use that to learn one thing about this other guy, and you can tell the kids about it on a random day. He's not your competition. You and him are on the same team, and if you can be a part of keeping his memory alive for those kids, even if it's something small, that shrine is going to go away. Not the jerk. This is why you don't marry single moms, bro. Dating is one thing, but to get serious with them is just asking for trouble. And if she's already demanding you go to her ex's parents' house on Thanksgiving, just wait till you see what she'll be demanding from you as the years go on. Also, her having a shrine for him? Bro, she's not ready to move on and be with someone else. Don't know how on earth you allow that in your home. You even admit that she'll always love him. You know that if she could have him back instead of you, she'd pick him in a heartbeat, right? While you spend your money raising his kids. Just know, bro, single moms, not even once. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for canceling my ex-boyfriend's plane ticket, leaving him homeless and unable to get to his family? A brief history. I met my now ex-boyfriend while doing volunteer work. Frankly, he's not been the nicest to me. He's just nice enough, just often enough to have had me convinced that he loved me. It's easier to see in retrospect. A few weeks before this incident, I booked both of us plane tickets to Germany. He needs to go there to stay with his family as he doesn't have anywhere else to live now that his current lease is up. The plan was for him to fly one way and for me to go with him for a short stay, then return home by myself. We were supposed to leave today. Now on to what happened. In between his lease ending and flying abroad, X has been staying at a friend's house in a more rural town, and I was invited to visit while his friend was away. We got to the house and my ex started making dinner for us. We were joking back and forth, being affectionate, and then in one moment, he flipped. I had gone to hug him when he wanted to peel potatoes, and he just started yelling. I honestly cannot come up with a bigger reason for him losing his temper aside from that hug. It was so out of the blue. And I'll admit, in that moment, I had a panic attack. My distress only served to escalate his anger. He told me to get out, and that there was a bus stop down the street, that I'd better hope to get there in time. I gathered my things and left, and thankfully did manage to catch a bus. After that initial period of shock, I realized I could never go back to him. I definitely couldn't go to a foreign country with him. I went to the airline's website to cancel my flights, and there was his booking too. I canceled it in an impulsive, numb moment. I didn't even get a refund because it's an economy airline. A few days ago, he texted me as though nothing had happened, asking for his flight details. I replied that there was no flight, that of course I wasn't going to pay to go to Germany with him after what had happened. He sent a long reply saying I knew he had nowhere else to go, that I knew he was struggling with money, and that I had effectively made him homeless, and he hopes I'm pleased with myself. I honestly didn't know what to say in return, but luckily I haven't heard from him since. I don't know if he's been able to get a flight himself, and a tiny part of me does worry for him. Am I the jerk? P.S. I paid for both our tickets with my own money. We never discussed this explicitly, but I just assumed he would pay me back at some point. Since then, it has become quite clear that that's never going to happen. This may or may not contribute to my Am I the Jerk verdict. I'm not sure. Not the jerk. You paid for his ticket and had not been reimbursed. He clearly has a friend he's able to stay with temporarily, so now he just needs to start figuring out his way home. Not the jerk. He was a jerk and you don't deserve that. Getting home is officially his problem, not yours. Good for you, knowing your worth. Karen stole my car. I've been with my wife for 4 years. I have a 20-year-old daughter, and she and my wife were never able to form a strong bond, and one of the reasons for that is distance. My wife did try to get close to my daughter in the past, but my daughter claimed she was just attempting to control her rather than have a respectful relationship with her. They had past issues, but now get along a bit. My daughter was visiting for Thanksgiving and brought her Honda car with her. I was out of the house when my wife, whose car had been sitting in the garage for a month now, took my daughter's car keys without her permission while she was showering and left in it for nearly 2 hours. My daughter called me as soon as she got out of the bathroom and was freaking out, saying neither her car or my wife were there. I tried to calm her down as I tried to get a hold of my wife, but she did not respond. We at this point figured my wife took the car, but did not know where she was or when she was coming back. My daughter searched my wife's closet, then called the cops and reported her car taken. She called back to tell me my wife's closet was half empty and cops were called. I got off work and went home immediately, and on the way home, my wife called, crying. She just got picked up by the cops at Walmart and was brought into the station. I went over there and met my daughter there. We discussed what happened, and it turned out my wife took the car to go do some shopping and left my daughter a note in the kitchen to let her know since she doesn't have her number, and took clothes from her closet she packed earlier in the morning for church donations. But my daughter thought she ran away and told the cops that this woman, my wife, ran away with her car. My daughter got her car back and my wife was let go after filling out a form. I took her home, and that is where she had a fight with my daughter, calling her crazy for calling the cops on her and a few other things I can't remember. But I told my wife what she did was unacceptable and she should be grateful my daughter only called the cops in a moment of panic and did not press charges after what she did. My wife was shocked and started crying, saying she couldn't believe I sided with my daughter after she humiliated her and caused her panic and to be involved with the cops like that. I stated she should have not touched the car in the first place, and she defended herself, saying she was getting things done and buying stuff we needed for the house, but we made her out to be the bad guy. She left to her sister's place, saying she had had enough of my daughter's disgraceful and vindictive attitude towards her, and said she'll stay there indefinitely or until I get my priorities straight, because after what happened, she's no longer sure if she is my wife or whether she was treated as such. My wife's car isn't working and has been in the garage for a while now. That is why she took my daughter's car. Not the jerk. She stole a car. I mean, there are consequences to Grand Theft Auto. They even made a video game about it. If she wanted to borrow the car, she needed to ask permission. Skipping that step puts you right in the felony theft category. Everyone sucks here. This whole story makes no sense. Okay, she took her car without asking, which, depending on the family, might not even be that weird. Why did nobody find that note? Why didn't you just wait for her to return? Why the panic? Who the heck goes straight to the closet to make such crazy assumptions that she just left? Who just calls the police on a rational, grown family member over borrowing something without asking once? I would get it if this was repeatedly. This was such an exaggerated chain of events, I cannot follow your thought process at all. I feel like there's a lot missing here and a lot of motives and dynamics that are unspecified. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP's daughter or his wife? Please let us know. This is why you don't marry a Karen. If I was your daughter, I'd press charges. I called my brother-in-law pathetic at our family dinner. I, female 24, have a sister, female 32, who has a husband who's 38, who's the poster child of weaponized incompetence. They have 4 kids, who are 10, 8, 5, and 3, and she's pregnant. My sister works a full-time job, over 40 hours a week, cleans her entire house, cooks, takes care of all her kids without him doing anything. It's seriously mind-blowing that she wakes up at like 4 a.m., cooks breakfast, does chores, gets all of her kids ready for school, takes them all to school and daycare, and all he does is stay home and work. And when his kids get home, after my sister picks them up of course, he will play with them for a little and play video games until he falls asleep. She actually makes more than him. My fiance, male 26, and I had to stay with them for 6 weeks while our home was being renovated, and since we both work from home, we helped her, and it's amazing how much happier she is when she has help. I helped with the kids, and my fiance even drove her to the doctor's appointments. Her husband literally only acknowledges he is a parent when his family is around. Then he is a God-fearing, hard-working father of 5. He's the one that wanted more kids. She wanted to stop after her last baby, but he needed more boys. I'm seriously concerned not only for her, but her kids as well, because now her oldest is seeing what's happening and trying to help, but my sister is prideful and refuses to let her kid do anything. Me and this man have never gotten along. He's been acting like this since their 8-year-old was born. I've tried talking to her about leaving, but she doesn't want her kids to grow up in a broken home. And unfortunately, her experience with our parents' divorce was completely different than mine, so she doesn't understand that a divorce would benefit her kids here because she thinks they need their mom and dad together. Cut to this past weekend. Her and her husband threw a pre-Thanksgiving potluck where our entire family, plus his, was there. I stayed with my sister a few days before because I knew he wouldn't help. So we're at dinner, all talking, and I mention we are trying for a baby, and my brother-in-law makes an offhanded comment to him about how hard fatherhood is, and I snapped and said, "Like you would know." He looked taken aback and asked me what I meant, and I unloaded on him, calling him a pathetic excuse for a man who makes my 8 months pregnant sister do everything for their family. I went off for a solid 10 minutes, and he sat there shrinking in his seat. I left. Last night, my sister called me and thanked me for standing up for her and told me she appreciated me. Although today I got a very nasty text from him telling me I'm a terrible person, and because I lied in front of his family, his mom is angry at him and is moving in with them to help her out, and I've made him the laughingstock of his family. He certainly thinks so, but am I the jerk for doing this? Not the jerk. Not even a justified jerk, as some comments suggest. You had a breaking point, and he was taking credit for the kid's upbringing that your sister single-handedly should be thanked for. He knows he's in the wrong, which is why he sat quietly and kept pretending in front of his family. He would have driven your sister into an early grave. His true colors are bound to come out sooner or later when his mother has moved in. He will not be able to pull the facade forever. When that happens, he will either have to change properly or risk losing the support of his family. All of it is starting with you speaking up for your sister against his lies. Well done. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for calling out her brother-in-law or not? Please let us know. That guy sounds even more worthless than you, Reddit boy. Am I the jerk for making my cousin angry at her husband for not getting her pregnancy cravings for her? I've had a lot of weird and oddly specific pregnancy cravings. So far, my husband has gotten me every single one without fail. A few days ago, my cousin, who is also pregnant, and her husband were visiting. While they were here, I got this random craving for these brownies I had from a bakery in France. I mentioned it to my cousin and her husband because I wanted to know if she was also having these oddly specific cravings. She told me she did, and it was horrible because her husband almost never got them for her. I said that wasn't nice of him, and I would be upset if my husband acted like that. Her husband got defensive and said he actually got her the food she was craving a lot, and that there was a limit to how many times he should be expected to run around after the food she was craving. He kept telling me my husband wouldn't get me my French brownies. We live in Europe, but not France, even though I knew he would, because I've had even more ridiculous cravings before, and he found a way to get them for me. I told him I would ask my husband, since he never believed me, to prove a point, and he was so confident that my husband would say no, which he obviously didn't. The brownies came after several hours, and the longer it was taking, the more arrogant her husband got. So I was very happy when they arrived. My cousin was visibly upset at her husband for the rest of their visit. My cousin's husband asked my husband if he had got them just to prove my point, but my husband said he got them because I said I was craving them, and that French brownies were much easier to get than some of the other cravings I've had. Cousin's husband asked about what other cravings I've had and was upset when he realized I knew I would get the brownies if I asked. Before they left, he called me out on setting him up to look bad and claims his wife is mad at him because of me. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. You basically used your husband as a performance animal to show off in front of your cousin and her husband. It's great that your husband has the ability to keep up with your cravings. Just because someone else may not have the same ability doesn't make them a bad husband or lesser husband. You wanted to brag and show off and caused a fight between your cousin and her husband. Make no mistake, I understand exactly where your husband is coming from. I tried to fulfill all of my wife's cravings both times she was pregnant. I would have been upset with her had she used me as a pawn to try to gloat or make someone else look bad though. Instead of appreciating your husband and his efforts, you use him to show your cousin how much better your husband is than hers. Good for you, I guess. Everyone sucks here. Good lord. The whole lot of you just sound insufferable, except your cousin. Cravings are totally a thing, but what a weird flex for you to prove how terrified your husband is of you to make him leave the country to get some brownies. Not brownies in general, mind you, which would be honestly a reasonable request, but an extremely specific thing that sounds like required momentous effort on his part to satisfy. And for what? So you could make her husband look bad? Granted, it sounds like her husband could be doing more to help her, but you're just way over the top, and I don't get why your husband is on board with this. Not the jerk. To be honest, I would do the same thing. As men themselves will never have to be pregnant, the least they can do is run a few errands here and there. They've basically had it made since the dawn of time. If he's too much of a baby to run to the store for a pregnant woman, I don't know why you'd stay with him, to be honest. And lol at everyone who was triggered by this story. If it legit made you upset, you are literally part of the problem and should seriously check your privilege. Come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.